to be part
Aisha
7.
was about to
I
run to his side,
forgot to
but
start
Typhlosion
recording,
stopped her with
so
a small explosion.
I just took down
A
a
flamethrower,
Cyclops.
hydropump,
I got its
and dark
eye,
pulse
which
were all
I
fired
need for
towards
a
Typhlosion,
crafting
but he
thing.
managed to avoid them by propelling
I'll show
himself
you
with
when I can
explosions.
find a way back to
That
base.
resulted in the assailant changing strategies.
But also,
Three
hey
different
guys,
attacks
welcome
shot
to part
towards Aisha
7.
this time.
I should really eat.
Aisha screamed in fear when she saw the attacks heading towards her. But the attacks never came. Aisha's eyes widened in shock when she saw Typhlosion standing in front of her, blocking all 3 attacks with his body. "No!" she shouted. "Ty!" Typhlosion yelled at her, as if urging her to leave. Understanding that staying would only make her a burden, she ran. As she fled, 3 more attacks chased after her. A powerful explosion halted the dark pulse, but the hydro pump struck Typhlosion directly, while the dragon pulse dragged him across the ground. "End this," the rogue trainer commanded. This time, a hyper beam was being charged and aimed at Aisha. Typhlosion chose to stand between them. "Don't. You'll die," Aisha yelled. She was about to run back, but Lucario grabbed her. Then a wall of ice separated them from the battle. Typhlosion glanced towards Lucario, who was carrying Aisha away. Life-changing second chances were rare for a Pokemon. Choosing the wrong trainer or wandering into the wrong part of the woods often led to unchangeable fates. But here he was. A former villain, standing in front of a foe he wasn't sure he could defeat, with everything he wanted to protect behind him. Second chances rarely came. He wouldn't waste it. Blue flames blazed from his back as red sparks flickered from his front. The ground around him began to scorch as the ice wall nearby started to melt. The hyper beam fired towards him. He opened his mouth and unleashed everything. On his way back in a small boat filled with Chanseys, the last thing Izuku expected was to see a blue glow emanating from his territory. "I don't like this at all," he muttered. When he arrived at the docks, he saw Grovyle holding his shield. Izuku grabbed the shield and sprinted towards the source of the blue glow. He arrived just in time to witness Typhlosion unleash a massive blue beam of fire towards a Hydreigon. The beam was so powerful that it tore through the hyper beam and struck the dragon Pokemon, even tearing a hole through the ship they were on. The sheer power Izuku witnessed was something he had never seen before since coming to this world. After unleashing the attack, Typhlosion fell to his knees. But even after landing such a powerful attack, the fight wasn't over. The Hydreigon was still conscious, its right side completely scorched. Izuku had never tried it before, but he knew he wouldn't be able to reach the Hydreigon otherwise. His whole body strained as he threw his shield with all his might. Typhlosion didn't even get to react as the shield shot past him and soared towards the Hydreigon, striking the main head. The Pokemon was sent flying by the force of the attack. "You did well," Izuku said, placing a hand on Typhlosion's shoulder, not minding the heat. "I'll take it from here." Izuku turned towards the Hydreigon, which seemed to be struggling to get back up. His shield had landed on the beach beside what was left of the ship, and Izuku doubted he could retrieve it without getting burned by the still scorching ground from Typhlosion's attack. He quickly scanned the surroundings, ensuring there was no one else around. His eyes caught a glimpse of a robe just under the rubble. He would keep an eye on it in case the person was still conscious. Before Izuku could act, it began to rain. He looked back and saw Politoed had activated Rain Dance to cool down the surroundings. "Thanks, now get him to safety," Izuku ordered. Politoed nodded and grabbed Typhlosion before hopping away. Izuku turned back to his opponent, who began to use moves and attack indiscriminately. He dodged Hydro Pump, Dark Pulse, Dragon Pulse, and many more attacks that shot towards him. The steam rising from the scorched ground being hit by raindrops made it even harder for the Hydreigon to focus. This gave Izuku the opportunity to get closer and even pick up his shield along the way. He tossed his shield, aiming just below the Hydreigon's chin. The impact sent it falling towards the water. Izuku managed to catch the shield to prevent it from falling in the water, but he barely landed in the shallow end. Izuku kept his eye on the spot where the Pokemon fell. He expected it to resurface, but instead, the red light of it returning to its Pokeball appeared. Izuku followed the trail and saw a person riding a Honchkrow. He glanced towards the other person he had noticed earlier and saw they were still there. "Are you the leader or something?" The person didn't answer. Instead, they pulled out a blood-red spear from somewhere and threw it towards Izuku with impressive force. Izuku easily blocked the spear with his shield, but was surprised when it shattered into glass shards. He looked away for a moment, but that was all it took for the attacker to disappear. "How did they do that?" he muttered, seeing no trace of them in the sky. Aisha arrived back at the house, only to find a group of unconscious Maitayana on the field, with Rlcraft holding a slightly larger one in his hands. This is why Lucario arrived a bit late, Aisha realized when she saw that a few of the Maitayana were separated from the others. A few minutes later, Typhlosion arrived with Politoed, while a group of Chanseys began to heal him. Aisha reacted quickly and called out to them. "Take him to the clinic." They carried Typhlosion to one of the beds, where Aisha began to set up the machine that would inject him with a potion directly into his body. He doesn't have any major internal injuries, so this should help him recover. "Just make sure he stays here," Aisha instructed the Chanseys, showing them the potion. One of the Chanseys saluted. "Thank you. I'll go see if anyone else needs help," Aisha said, running back out of the clinic with Lucario following to ensure she didn't return to the main fight. People tended to do things like that. So, they weren't lying when they said you're a magnet for trouble, Brawly laughed as he oversaw the detainment of the attackers. "That's not very flattering to hear," Izuku replied. "Don't worry, you'll grow out of it," Brawly patted him on the back. "By the way, after all this, stop by the gym so I can give you pointers on how to be a commanding trainer." Izuku turned to Brawly in confusion. "No offense, kid. You're an amazing trainer. Every combatant on your team has the best foundations I have ever seen, but they barely have any combat experience to be independent battlers." Izuku turned to Lucario, who was standing guard as the officers loaded up the Mighty in cages. "Training an independent battler is tough, bro. Just look at Roxanne. She's been a gym leader for a few years and has only had one completely independent battler, her Nosepass. Norman has been one for a lot longer and only has 4, all part of his original team. I guess I need to start from scratch," Izuku replied. "Not necessarily," Brawly responded. "You do have one Pokemon that's already very experienced," he mentioned, referring to Atlas. "He's got a solid fighting style. All you need to do is set up his build." "His build?" Izuku inquired. A build is basically the whole structure of a Pokemon's growth. For example, my ace, the Hariyama I raised from an egg, has the Palm Strike build, Brawly explained. Every training session focused on increasing the power of his palm strikes. Since he has a build specific to him, he's already stronger than my grandfather's Hariyama that you faced. This is a lot of information to process after everything that just happened, Izuku said, rubbing his forehead. "Don't sweat it, bro. You can hear the rest when you visit the gym," Brawly said, giving him a friendly pat on the back before leaving. "Sure." Izuku nodded, deciding to make his way to the fence. Once he arrived, he saw Aisha still looking after Typhlosion, who remained unconscious. Exactly 8 hours had passed since the attack, and morning had arrived. The officers had come at night to round up all the Mighty for transport off the island. The unconscious man Izuku found earlier had already been taken away for investigation. Unfortunately, there was nothing they could do about the other person who had attacked his home. "How is he?" Izuku asked as he took a seat. "He'll be fine. All his bruises have healed, and he didn't sustain any wounds, so no stitching was needed. He did overwork his fire canals, so he won't be allowed to use fire moves for a while." "Fire canals?" Izuku raised an eyebrow. A lot of fire types have this body part. It's basically small pores that release flames, even when not used for moves. Like a Rapidash's fiery mane, Aisha explained. I always tell myself to read more books, but somehow I keep discovering information that feels like it should be obvious, Izuku said, facepalming. You can't blame yourself for this one, Aisha assured him. We learned it at the Nurse Academy, after all. Wait. I have to ask. Are there schools for children here? Of course. Where else would they learn to read and write? Count, basic math, and even cultures. What about history? Well, it's taught, but not everything. Just the parts related to culture. Only a few people decide to study deeper into it, though, Aisha answered.
Treat yourself to big savings on top-rated pieces during Raymore and Flanagan's anniversary sale. Prefer to spread out your payments? Enjoy
Answered. Calculus. Isn't that for scientists or something? Aisha looked at him, confused. Why couldn't I have been born here? Izuku sighed, looking up at the sky. Aisha seemed a bit taken aback but didn't let it bother her. I almost forgot, starting tomorrow, I'm going to be training my Pokemon quite intensely, Izuku informed her. They might stop by a lot more frequently. How exactly are you going to train them? Aisha asked hesitantly. You'll find out tomorrow, Izuku replied with a smile. She had lost all her will to live. To her species, that one special bond meant everything. It became her whole reason to exist, so losing it in an instant should have been the end of her. But somehow, she survived. She shouldn't have. The remnant of her bond prevented her from giving up entirely, so she slowly withered away. It had been a while, but she was still alive. She had left the room where she was fading away, yet she still lacked the will to continue. She began spending her days alone in a corner, silently observing her surroundings. This time, instead of a cold person giving her food and leaving, a variety of people and Pokemon approached her to share food and companionship. Politoed would sit beside her, telling stories about the short time she had spent with their new trainer. Typhlosion would grumble while eating. Ninetales quietly ate before taking a nap. Grovyle would finish his food and keep her company in silence. Lucario spent most of his time trying to get to know her, often asking her questions even though she didn't respond. Always cheerful, he shared tales of the battles he experienced with their trainer, suggesting that maybe someday she could join them in helping others. But it felt like a distant dream since she no longer had a reason to live. Hey. She glanced and saw the man who had taken her away from her previous state. A warm man who showed how much he cared for his Pokemon. He sat beside her, staring off toward the ranch. Her bond would have liked him. I heard from Aisha that your health is starting to improve. That was because they wouldn't leave her alone until she had taken her medicine and eaten. I found out about your story. It didn't matter. It must have hurt a lot. More than anything. I've lost a lot too. My mother. My mentor. My friends. My world. You made a promise to her, didn't you? Yes. A promise that hurts to keep. Yes. She must have asked you to keep living on. Yes. I didn't get to make a promise like that, but I know they would have told me if they had the chance. And it's my duty to ensure that their memories live on with me. To make sure that everyone who watches me sees them within me. To show that their support resulted in something. I don't need to hear them say they're proud, but I will make sure they are proud of me. The man stood up. She must have been an amazing trainer. She was. Don't let the world forget her, he said before walking away. Izuku stood before Lucario and Grovyle with his shield in hand. Both of you better go all out, or you'll get hurt, he warned, making Aisha, who was watching from the side, look concerned. To her surprise, both Lucario and Grovyle did not hesitate to attack their own trainer. Lucario jumped into the air with Force Palm activated, striking down toward Izuku. He blocked the attack with his shield, standing his ground as the force of the blow was dispersed, then lightly pushed back to make Lucario lose his balance in the air before kicking him gently. Grovyle charged a powerful attack, surrounded by a storm of leaves, as he rushed towards Izuku. Instead of blocking, Izuku threw his shield with such force that Aisha felt the wind pressure. The shield tore through Grovyle's attack and slammed into his gut, sending him flying back. Meanwhile, Lucario had gotten back up and was about to use Bone Rush to create a staff. However, just as the staff was conjured, Izuku broke it with his bare hands. He spun around and slammed his elbow into the side of Lucario's head. Grovyle quickly recovered and used Quick Attack to rush Izuku while he was engaged with Lucario. Yet, Izuku managed to react in time, grabbing Grovyle mid-air and slamming him into Lucario. Aisha wondered if Izuku even needed Pokemon to fight. "This one has been causing quite a lot of problems recently," King said as he read through the reports. "Who is this?" Rook bowed and placed a holographic disc in front of King. "This man is called Niberius. He was a former associate of ours in the production department, but his lack of results led to his termination." "What was the project he was working on?" King asked. "Reproducing the Pokeball's miniaturization and storage ability," Rook answered. "We were trying to incorporate it into our equipment, but his results always failed to work on anything made of metal." "Well, that's redundant since the whole purpose of technology like that is to carry heavy equipment," King said. "Anything else noteworthy about him?" "Other than being a fire and dark type specialist, there is nothing else," Rook stated. "His display of combat ability must have developed recently." "Or another person is involved," King added. "Skills like that aren't developed in a few years. The Pokemon in the reports can't be controlled by a mere failure of a researcher." "What do you think, Your Majesty?" "Niberius was the one that attacked the blonde individual, while the one that attacked Mr. Midoriya has yet to be recognized," King mentioned. "You mentioned that Niberius specializes in fire and dark types, so the mastermind most likely has a dark type capable of weakening mental barriers." "Your Majesty, a lot of dark-type Pokemon can learn Dream Eater, which allows them to weaken a person's mental barrier after prolonged exposure," King explained. "Once their mental barrier is weakened, they could potentially control their mind using a powerful psychic type." "Quite a terrifying ability," Rook commented. "It is, but it is not something that can easily be done," King stated. "The person behind this has been preparing for a long time and sees Mr. Midoriya and his group as a threat." "What are we going to do, Your Majesty?" King smiled. "Nothing. The only one of value to me is Mr. Midoriya, and he is more than strong enough to handle a coward and their tricks." "Are you certain, Your Majesty?" "Quite. This opportunity will allow him to shine brighter, creating a bigger shadow for us to thrive in." Izuku had already figured out most of Atlas's fighting style. To move more freely, Rlcraft could subconsciously activate Aerial Ace. Every time he planned an attack, Aerial Ace would activate, allowing him to move more agilely. Atlas's attack pattern revolved around taking damage and using it against his opponents. Considering that Rlcraft was used to enduring attacks during the war, the extent of damage he could withstand was still a mystery. Izuku noticed that Rlcraft attacked in two ways, a full-on charge or a heavy hit while stationary, like the move used to finish off Hariyama. However, neither approach was effective against Izuku. Despite his own strength, he could not deal any notable damage to Atlas, preventing him from utilizing his heavy counter. In the case of his charge attacks, Izuku was too nimble to be hit. "I'm guessing most of your targets are either slow frontline Pokemon or walls," Izuku commented as Atlas missed another charge. Atlas nodded, landing on the ground, looking a bit frustrated. Lucario approached him and patted his leg, as if to say, "You'll get used to it. Don't mind it too much. You're still recovering your former strength," Izuku stated. "This is too nerve-wracking," Aisha commented from the sidelines. Izuku turned towards her as his Pokemon headed off for their individual training. "I guess you've never seen training like this." "Like this? This shouldn't even be possible," Aisha exclaimed. I've never seen Pokemon of such quality before, but you somehow overpower them with just a shield and your bare hands. Aisha ranted. Atlas is a war hero who has taken on armies of Pokemon, but you fight him like he's just a normal Heracross. I'm sure he's holding back, Izuku shrugged, dropping his shield, which dug into the ground. Aisha didn't look convinced. I thought I'd seen everything. Enough about that. How are you feeling after what happened? Izuku asked. It didn't affect me much. Although it's not common, Pokemon attacks do happen a lot, Aisha answered. And I'm old enough to understand that the world isn't very safe. Have you dreamed of traveling the world as well? Aisha shook her head. Not really. Short trips would be fun, but I prefer living quietly. That's going to be tough while working for me, Izuku joked. I'm quite the magnet for trouble. Aisha giggled. This is actually pretty normal. A lot of random wild Pokemon often terrorize towns after all. And not every place has a Typhlosion capable of causing such destruction. I guess considering how powerful he is, activating Blaze would result in that much firepower, Izuku mentioned. I wonder if I should have him develop his hidden move. I'm sure he would like that, Aisha nodded. Despite being quite brash, he's very protective. Izuku chuckled. I actually wanted to start calling him Quachin, but he evolved before I could even get used to the idea. Aisha giggled at that. I suppose Takshan won't sound very amusing. Izuku shook his head. Not really. Bakchan from Bakfun just makes him sound old, she added. Bakfun? Izuku looked at her in confusion. Oh, when you read Typhlosion in the traditional language, it says Bakfun. Not very threatening, Izuku commented. Well, they weren't supposed to be threatening, Aisha replied. Fair point. Both of them were silent for a while before Aisha spoke again. May I request something? Do you want a raise? Aisha quickly shook her head. Not that. I just think several flying Pokemon would be handsome that she should start making dinner before walking away. Over at Petalburg, Itsuka felt a shiver run up her spine. Setsuna noticed and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Itsuka expressed her concern about her position as the first wife feeling at risk. Setsuna reassured her, saying it was always the housekeepers who were tough to beat, but Itsuka just gave her a flat look. A week had passed, and King had not received any more information about the new threat in his kingdom. However, he was determined to continue improving his realm. When the lead researcher for the cloning project entered his office, King
I'm going
inquired
back
about their
space right now.
progress.
It's right that
The
way.
researcher regrettably informed him that they had yet to stabilize the clones without a DNA sample from the legendary Pokemon Mew, as the sample from Ditto was insufficient. King asked if they suffered losses from the inferior clones, to which the researcher replied that they could be used indefinitely as long as they did not suffer severe damage. King decided it was best to avoid involving a legendary Pokemon for now. Turning to Rook, King asked for news from Mr. Midoriya, expecting him to Rook. King asked for news from Mr. Midoriya, expecting him to contact them since his property should have sustained damage. Rook reported that Mr. Midoriya seemed focused on training his Pokemon and had not mentioned whether the egg had hatched. The last Pokemon registered was multiple Chanseys, leading King to conclude that Mr. Midoriya was aiming to create a functioning city. I'm back. Itsuka explained as her boat arrived at the island. Setsuna smirked, teasing her about missing Izuku, even though they spoke every night. Itsuka jumped off the boat, yelling for Setsuna to be quiet. Setsuna then noticed a Typhlosion watching them from a distance, and shortly after, she heard an explosion where Itsuka had run. Rushing in that direction, Setsuna found an open field where a Pokemon battle was taking place. Izuku's Lucario, surrounded by a blue aura, was moving swiftly to find an opening against Izuku. Despite Lucario's impressive speed, Izuku was able to block every attack, creating shockwaves with each impact. Setsuna was confused, remarking that this couldn't be the same Pokemon she had seen struggle during the beach tournament. Itsuka commented that anyone would get stronger after training with Izuku, which made Setsuna look at her oddly. As Itsuka yelled again, she caught Izuku's attention, causing Lucario to take advantage of the moment and charge at him. Izuku managed to parry the attack and countered with a kick. He advised Lucario to learn to hide his intent, as a person with good combat instincts would sense the desire to attack. A woman with pink hair approached, commenting on Izuku's ability to sense danger. Itsuka asked how Izuku had trained his Pokemon, and he led them to a part of the property that looked like a wreckage, where his Grovyle appeared to be struggling. Izuku pointed to his Gardevoir, who was glowing pink and gesturing towards the field. Itsuka realized he had created a gravity chamber for training. Izuku explained that while Gardevoir wasn't in perfect shape, she was eager to help others train. Aisha, how did it go? Izuku asked later. Setsuna smirked, while Itsuka revealed that Setsuna had lost twice to Norman, requiring them to stay an additional 4 days in Petalburg. Izuku was confused, and Itsuka explained that Setsuna's Pokemon lacked a fighting style, making it a tough matchup against Norman's well-trained Pokemon. What do you ladies plan on doing now? Izuku asked. Itsuka stated she would be joining him on his journey, while Setsuna planned to research fossil Pokemon at Empire, mentioning a nearby town with a fossil research lab. When Izuku asked if she had a specific Pokemon in mind, Setsuna grinned and said it was a secret. You want me to make my future dojo
Wish we could drink the rain.
Itsuka asked. I don't think it'll work out much if people need to use a boat every time they visit. Good point. Izuku responded. Maybe I should buy a property on the mainland. I think your perception of money is a bit off. Itsuka mentioned. How much money do you even have? After everything so far, I have around 7 billion credits left, Izuku revealed. Itsuka nearly dropped her coffee. What? I'm a model, but I barely have 1 million in my account. I got paid a lot for the criminals I captured and the wild Pokemon I drove away. Is it that surprising? Aisha interjected as she placed down a plate of eggs. Isn't it obvious that people would pay someone for a job that values safety? Well, Itsuka admitted she didn't have a reply to that. You see, where we came from, celebrities always got paid a lot more compared to. Well, us, Izuku explained. That sounds silly, Aisha commented. The highest paying jobs here at Brooklyn are the head Pokemon Ranger, Chief of Police, and the Pokemon League title holders. The gyms? Itsuka asked, referring to the title holders. Yes. The gyms, Elite Four, and the Champion. They get paid a lot since they're in charge of protecting their city, Aisha answered. I heard Norman got paid 1 billion last month after dealing with the Grovyle outbreak. Itsuka turned to Izuku. I love this place. They have their priorities straight. Aisha gave him a curious look. You two need to talk to someone. Do you happen to be a therapist too? Izuku asked. Aisha shook her head.
Somebody had to do it.
Too. Izuku asked. Aisha shook her head. Sadly, that's an entirely different branch of medical practice. Wait.
Hush
Has
to.
Atlas gone through therapy? Izuku wondered as he ate an egg. Yes, I saw on his medical records that he did go through therapy, Aisha answered. That's good to hear, Izuku nodded. By the way, we'll be heading to Slateport in 2 days, right? Itsuka asked Izuku. Yeah. And Setsuna left this morning without telling me, Izuku realized. Itsuka sighed. She didn't notice that the timestamp on her ticket was in the morning and only found out last night, so. Itsuka waved her hands. Okay. Izuku turned to Aisha. You think everything will be alright here? I can't promise it will be perfect, but I'll work hard, Aisha answered. That's a good answer if you ask me, Itsuka commented. I mean, a simple yes would have worked for me, but I like the attitude. Izuku gave her a thumbs up. 2 days later. Be careful out there,
Hush, Zach.
Aisha said as she handed them some boxed lunches. Make sure to wash it after eating. I'll make sure to remind him, Itsuka replied. You say that like I'm not responsible, Izuku pretended to be offended. Aisha smiled. Good luck out there. Thanks, Izuku responded. Izuku and Itsuka waved goodbye to Aisha as they boarded the ship. It would only take several hours to arrive in Slateport, so they decided not to get a room and just stayed on the deck. This region is so hot. Itsuka groaned. We're lucky there's even shade on the deck, she pointed at the tent covering the deck. I'll save my complaining for any problems that might happen, Izuku said wisely. I think we're good this time, Itsuka replied. A lot of them failed their plans here, so I doubt others will even try. It shouldn't be worth the risk for them. I guess that's a fair assumption considering the people of this world think more rationally, Izuku nodded in agreement. Should we try fishing? On a moving boat? Itsuka raised an eyebrow. Izuku pointed at a group of people with fishing rods. Please tell me you actually think they'll catch a fish, Itsuka gave Izuku a flat look. Izuku shrugged. Better than doing nothing. I'd rather stay here in the shade. Do you remember when you were researching War Hero Pokemon? Izuku suddenly asked. Yeah. Who else was on the list? A Typhlosion called Tai, a Sizer, a Rhydon, a Rlcraft, and an Ampharos. Not all of them had a fancy name like Atlas, but all of them had a significant impact during the war. I guess when you're the one breaking down fortresses, you get a cool name, Izuku joked. There's also the fact that Atlas was mentioned to have come from a breeding camp in Hoenn. That's why he was in the Hoenn War shelter. Nevertheless, they can't blame the Pokemon for following orders. Itsuka raised an eyebrow at the sudden statement and noticed Izuku's hand squeezing the metal handrail. Everything alright? It's nothing, Izuku released the handrail. Aisha told me, Itsuka revealed. Izuku flinched. Izuku leaned against the window overlooking his property. With the moon shining down on it, everything seemed to glow. This was his home now. Something he needed to protect. Where everything he cared about would reside. On the front lawn, he could see Atlas and Typhlosion sparring. Two of his Pokemon that were similar and different at the same time. Atlas may be considered a war hero, but there are always two sides to a story. He's a hero to his allies and a monster to his enemies. Typhlosion followed someone that caused destruction. Both of them had their pasts, but Izuku knew better than to blame the Pokemon. In this world, the Pokemon acted no differently from quirks. They were considered tools that did the bidding of their trainer. But they were sentient beings, so were they really free of blame? Are you okay, sir? Aisha approached him, offering a cup of tea. I'm fine, Izuku smiled. I've been taking care of people and Pokemon for a while, sir. I can tell when someone is not really fine. That's a thing here. Izuku chuckled, and Aisha kept staring. Alright. I'm just finding it hard to draw a line on a Pokemon's repercussions for their actions, Izuku confessed. You don't need to think so hard about it, Aisha replied. I've only known you for a few weeks, but I know you're someone who should trust what their heart says. Following my heart has led to some pretty questionable decisions, Izuku said. Do you regret making those decisions? Izuku shook his head. Not at all. Then if you think someone deserves a second chance, give it to them. Because I can't think of a better person to leave them with than you, Aisha said with a smile. Thank you. Anytime, boss. Izuku! Itsuka yelled, snapping him back to reality. Izuku was startled. What? You suddenly froze when I told you that Aisha mentioned you were having problems with your Pokemon. Itsuka crossed her arms. It's nothing. I'm already coming to terms with things, Izuku assured. Alright, but you know that we're here for you, right? Absolutely, I've already gone through this talk several times in my first life. That's not very convincing to hear. You want to practice Mega Evolution already? Kyoka asked in concern. Yes. It's necessary, Momo stated as she sorted through hundreds of stones and marbles to look for a key stone. And you're alright with this? Kyoka turned to Zinnia. Zinnia scoffed. Where'd your punk confidence go? She asked as she sorted through the stones as well. Kyoka's eyes twitched. Fine, she joined in. Well, this place looks busy, Itsuka commented as they arrived at Slateport City. It looked no different from a massive harbor with probably hundreds of ships going in and out of the city. Massive crates were transported around by Pokemon, either from the air or the land. Are those fish? Normal fish. Izuku pointed at a giant cooler filled with ice and fish. Yeah, dot. Itsuka gave him a confused look. What else could it be? I'm just surprised to actually see normal animals. You've been eating normal animal meat though. Izuku just shrugged. Want to go shopping? He decided to change the subject. Alright. Although Itsuka had already been to Slateport, she hadn't gotten the chance to fully explore the market before, mainly because she lacked the funds to even consider going to the expensive part of the market. 10 million credits for an EXP share. Itsuka's eyes bulged at the price tag. How does that work? Izuku hadn't actually seen the item in action. It works by making the Pokemon you use it on experience the battle undergoing at the same time. A woman wearing a business suit approached them. Really? How? Like this, the woman took out a Pokeball, then she placed the EXP share on it like a helmet. With this, the Pokemon inside would experience the battle of your other registered Pokemon without needing to expend their own energy. How does it know which is my Pokemon? Izuku asked. Using the trainer's signature registered to all your Pokeballs, the woman replied. DMN. So technological. Izuku muttered. I'll buy it. Itsuka turned to him in shock. Seriously? Yeah, Izuku smiled. I think I just found a way to use it to the fullest. That sentence concerns me, Itsuka replied. What's all this? King asked. Mr. Midoriya has sent several blueprints with construction requests. King looked over the blueprints. An arena, bathhouse, and watchtower. I think it's more of a perch for flying Pokemon, Rook spoke. Building won't be a problem, but maintaining the environment will, he commented. Have the builders work on it. As you wish, Your Majesty, Rook bowed. Another matter I wish to report is a group of Pokemon traffickers we found at Slateport City. Why haven't you done anything yet? King asked with a raised eyebrow. My apologies, Your Majesty. We planned to get rid of them, but we found out that Mr. Midoriya has just arrived in Slateport City, so we decided to inform you before acting. Oh. King grinned. Then inform him in the form of a commission. Understood. How can you spend so much money like that? Itsuka muttered as they left the market. It's an investment for the future, Izuku replied as they made their way to the Pokemon Ranger base. When they arrived, they noticed that the base had a portion of it reaching over the water and some rangers heading out riding their water Pokemon. I want to try that. Itsuka muttered. Do you have a water type? Izuku asked. Itsuka shook her head. All my Pokemon are fighting types. You can still catch other Pokemon, Izuku said. Being a specialist doesn't mean you can only catch certain Pokemon. I guess. What are we even doing here? To earn some money, Izuku said as they entered the ranger base. Can I ask if there's any bounties? Izuku asked as they approached the counter. The woman at the counter gave Izuku a quick look. Are you Midoriya? Yes. Izuku replied, confused. They told me to inform you that a raid on Pokemon traffickers will be happening tonight. The woman handed him a piece of paper with the time and place of the raid. Thanks. Is that how this usually goes? Itsuka asked in confusion. No. You're coming with? Izuku asked as he was putting on his gear. I also fought in the front lines during the war, Itsuka replied as her gauntlets materialized around her arm.
Hey, bud,
No
I
cheap
need
out.
to borrow you for a few minutes,
Izuku
alright?
asked.
Right now?
Not right now,
Very
but probably
funny,
in like 10
Itsuka
minutes.
gave him a flat
Okay.
look.
Alright? I want to move some
Itsuka
stuff
wore a
alongside
forest
the
green
shed.
jacket
Because
with a
Doug's
teal
weed
shirt
whacking.
underneath and
Okay.
two black
Move your
shorts.
father's fucking lawnmower.
There's
It's gonna
probably
take
going
all
to be a
three
lot
of
of
us.
Okay.
attacks flying around, so watch your head. I'm not a stranger to these things, you know. She placed her hands on her hips. I'm not fragile. I know, but this is different from people with quirks, Izuku replied. Pokemon have more than one trick. I'll keep it in mind. After gearing up, Izuku and Itsuka headed towards the meeting spot for the raid. It was an old warehouse a few meters away from the traffickers' location. Both of them noticed that there were a lot of other trainers joining the raid. Everyone, please wear these bandanas to avoid friendly fire during the chaos, a Pokemon Ranger announced as the others began handing out yellow bandanas. Our goal is to incapacitate the traffickers and be careful with the captive Pokemon. The Pokemon Ranger proceeded to explain the process of the operation. Since they outnumbered the traffickers, the plan
Okay.
was to surround the whole hideout and attack, making every possible area covered to prevent anyone from
Alright guys, I
escaping.
might have to be
There were
going
also
soon.
psychic Pokemon stationed around the area to prevent the use of teleportation. How do you plan on doing this? They just told us to attack, Itsuka whispered. Izuku grinned. I mean, we have someone that's pretty good at sieges. Izuku held up a pokeball. Won't that bring back some trauma? I cleared it up with him. This will be more of a stress relief more than anything, Izuku said as he tossed the pokeball. Atlas materialized, ready to fight. Aerial Ace activated, and he was already charging towards the hideout. Intruder, one of the guards yelled, and attacks began firing towards Atlas. Atlas activated Mega Horn and began to spin in the air.
Alright guys, I'm gonna stop
Shining
recording
light
now.
beams
I'll
that
see
blasted
you all
through the walls.
tomorrow.
Enemy
Well, not
Pokemon were
tomorrow,
still flying
but
as Atlas landed within their
whenever I
base.
get
That was
back
new,
inside
Izuku
so I can
commented as they
record the
stared
next
at the
video.
created.
Bye,
I'm guessing
y'all.
that's the usual
This is
method he
part
used.
7 signing off.